Welcome back, everyone, to Delta Y. This week, I'll be talking about, that's right, it's just me, Josh, again. Grayson still doesn't have his mic. Amazon shipping's a little slow this time of the year, understandably. It's the holiday season. So, for this week, and hopefully by next week, we'll have Grayson back to have a longer episode with more discussion. But this week on Delta Y, I'll be talking about New Horizon gearing up for its close encounter with Ultima Thule, an object in the Kuiper Belt, a 3D printed robot hand that plays the piano from the University of Cambridge, a plasma treatment that will skip adhesives to create strong adhesion, and a researcher that uses Musica to manage networking, along with a funny story on a Frenchman whose goal is to float across the Atlantic in a barrel. Once again, this is Josh, and welcome to Delta Y. So my first article for you guys this week is the New Horizon spacecraft gearing up for its close encounter with Ultima Thule in the Kuiper Belt, which is about 6.5 billion kilometers from the Sun. Now, this object is theorized to have been around for about 4.6 billion years, so since the start, really, of our solar system. And scientists have estimated it hasn't moved ever since then. And nothing has ever really come close to it until, coming up soon, NASA's New Horizon spacecraft. It's going to come relatively close, about 3,500 kilometers away, which is going to be most likely the closest anything's ever come to it. And it's interesting because it's going to come and see what's on it and in it. And it could see, what it's made of. And this is the first probe that's ever come, out in this belt. And it hasn't really done much since it flew past Pluto in 2015. So, we've also sent probes through the Kuiper Belt. I keep saying that wrong. Sorry. Pioneer and Voyager. But they measured, particle and magnetic fields there. But nothing's gone there. And nothing was, really discovered in the 1990s because they flew right past. So what New Horizon's going to do is it's going to, come right close. And it's going to be very interesting to see, what this could be made of. Because, obviously we don't know much about this object, the Ultima Thule. And I may be pronouncing that wrong, but I had to Google how to pronounce that, which is very interesting. But it's one of the very few objects that the Hubble Space Telescope chose in 2014 that could be reached using the least amount of fuel. So they're really just looking in to see, what are these objects like that are in the Kuiper Belt. The rock is only about 30 kilometers across, and it could be even two rocks orbiting each other. But it's, it could be interesting to see, what could be on the surface of it. It was theorized it could be slightly red, which would be not a lot of exposed ice on the surface. And, this is interesting because they're trying to see how much they can find out about it before they get there with the New Horizon. So they're really looking also to see, is there stuff around this object that could damage New Horizon? They're going to be traveling at 14 kilometers a second. So, and it's going to be twice as close as the craft got to Pluto at 3,500 kilometers. And this is really interesting because it's going to take really high resolution photos of something really far out in our solar system. So, knowing that things on this rock are preserved could tell us about chemistry in our outermost solar nebula when the planets were formed. Which is really cool because we could be learning, things about it. Now, we're not about to see, anything about this until January 1st. So, a couple more days for us. But it's interesting because it's going to take a lot longer to get the full picture because it'll spend, 20 months sending this data from Ultima Thule back to Earth. So, obviously we're getting the pictures are taken in a few days, but we're not going to see them for another year and a half, roughly, which is a little disappointing, but that's how spaceflight works, really. It's taking time. It's got to take time to see things, We didn't see Pluto until very recently in so much detail as we ever have before. It's going to also observe about 25 to 30 more objects in the Kuiper Belt, but nothing as close as Ultima Thule. So this is going to be really interesting to see, what could we find about this? What could it teach us about our outer ring? Could it show us things that we didn't know before about the chemistry of our solar system? Obviously this is all stuff that's speculation, and we have a lot more to learn. There's a lot more stuff that's going to take time, and we won't know anything for about 20 months, but maybe, if we're still around kicking out this podcast, which we are hoping to do, we'll be there to update you guys with stuff all the way back here from episode 11. All right, moving on to our next article, which is a 3D printed robot hand that plays the piano. Now, this is from the University of Cambridge, so I found that kind of ironic, Cambridge and everything with their huge ability for music, their huge history of music. So this robot hand was developed by researchers there, and it's made by 3D printing soft and rigid materials together to replicate all the bones and ligaments, but not the muscles and tendons a human hand has. So it's got limited range of motion, but it's also a surprisingly wide range of movement that was still possible. So they were able to use the passive fingers, which can't move independently, but it could play the piano, they found. And it's really cool to see this, because I'll try to find a video to link with this article down below. But it's cool to see that we're creating a mechanical property or a mechanical thing that can play music. They've achieved a wide range of movement in robots between walking, swimming, or flying, but this is the first type of thing where they've created more, precise, very precise movement. And they're going to, obviously work with this to create it more exact so it can play more piano songs exact. Right now it's hitting all the keys at once, which isn't perfect, but it's, a step. And every step forward gets us a little bit closer to that, the point where robots and machines can do more jobs for us, which can take out, dangerous jobs from humans, which is a point that honestly I'm looking forward to in life, when we can start taking away the dangerous jobs humans have to do. But it was taught to play by showing how mechanics, material properties, environment, and wrist actuation all affect the hand. So by actuating its wrist, it can show how its hand interacts with the piano. So it really shows how it can determine how it interacts with the environment. And it's played this with, staccato notes and legato notes. And if I spit out terms here and you guys don't know what they are, I'm sorry, but I've been playing the piano for a decade and a half, so I know a lot of piano terms personally. It's really cool that they're just teaching it. These are just the basics right now that they're teaching it, but they're hoping to develop this into even more complex behaviors that they could teach this robot to do. And it's really cool to see this, because we're approaching a point where we're teaching robots to do things that are complex, but also we as humans define them as simple. So once we get a robot with multiple hands, I think, playing, Beethoven or Bach, you're going to create a robot that can do a lot more than you'd think it could. I mean, we've had robots that do surgery for years now, but I don't think they're ever that precise. They're always very one type, one project robots. This would be a robot that could do many, many, many things, all by learning different, different subjects, I should say. So it's learning how to replicate a human hand. Well, obviously, a human hand can be used for so much in life. What else could this robot do? So that's obviously something really awesome to watch and just kind of think about, what are we teaching robots to do? And honestly, I'm not scared of robots ever creating more, because obviously to create a robot, we have to teach the robot what to do. And so when we're creating robots in this way, we have to teach them to play the piano. We never have to have fear of robots, I think. Many people do, but I don't think AI could ever take over our lives, because we are the ones that created AI. But this would be really awesome. You could go into a bar one day, sit down, and there's a robot playing the piano in the corner. Obviously, that takes away someone's job, but that could enable someone else to take that job they wanted and pursue it in different ways, by recording. Instead of having to play at a bar to make money, they could go, they could apply themselves differently and record themselves and, move on a different way in their life. And it's kind of creating this junction where, are we creating a robot to do one thing? Are we creating a robot to destroy human jobs? Anyway, that's something to think about for sure. So, on to our next article, which is titled, "Give It the Plasma Treatment, Strong Adhesion Without Adhesives." And this is interesting because researchers are using a plasma treatment to create fluoropolymers and silicone resin adhere without any adhesives. So this is heat-assisted helium plasma treatment that creates an oxygen conditioning functional group on PTFE or PFA. So this is really cool because it would free up resins that could be used in the medical field or the food fields, where it could be, a different way to do this, not necessarily a lower cost, but it's a different way that frees up our resources to be used elsewhere. So it's lightweight, strong, and unreactive, which is the awesome thing. Because, when you plasmize these, you're creating a plasma that it treats the rubber and the plastics to adhere to one another or to other materials by using the polymer surface chemistry. So if you spray PTFE with plasma helium at 200 degrees, it adheres to unvulcanized rubber. And this was a technique created by study lead author Yuji Okahobo. I am so sorry if I butchered that name. I'm very American. I don't have a lot of experience in foreign names in my life. Anyway, but this is awesome because what this does is by doing this kind of adhesion, it's a little bit faster than adhesives. And it sticks them together even better. Well, it's still an adhesive. It's not a plastic weld. It's not something that can, it's not a permanent bond. But it is a really strong bond. And what this means is that this could also be used. I said that we need to free up the resin for food and medical uses. But this could also be used in the medical and food technologies to create adhesive-free adhesion. So what it does is, removes that need for volatile chemicals. If you think of stuff that seals your food or stuff that they use to seal wounds or stuff that they use, in all sorts of different medical applications. I don't even know them all. I'm sure there's millions of applications like that. So this widely broadens their usability. So it's really interesting to see this because it's this is a whole nother level of materials engineering where you have people who are finding ways oh wait, what if instead of using adhesives, why don't we adhere things using something never thought of before? And I'm sure this has been thought of before. But obviously, this is the first time they've got it to work. This is able to bond copper and glass. So that's really cool. It's like an extremely strong double-sided tape. And what this means is that when you can bond, you can stack things. And by creating a thin adhesive layer, by doing this, you could create, stackable items that could be bulletproof or shockproof or anything like that, where you're creating a complex material made of many, many things. So this is really cool to see. I know there's a lot of uses for plasma, but I never really looked into it. And this is something I never really heard of before. And it's really cool to see that, it's nothing happens to these when you try to pull them apart. They don't, no peeling occurs. The corners, the edges, and the middles, it just doesn't come apart, which is really cool to see. This is an adhesive that really, really sticks. And I want to apologize for slightly earlier, I just said that, it's not like a welding, but it kind of is like a welding because it's so strong it doesn't like to come apart. Now, obviously, most adhesives are like that. Think of a 3M adhesive. It's really strong. It doesn't want to come off, but it does come off. And I'm sure that these do come off if you try hard enough. But obviously they were doing testing and they didn't come off, which is awesome. This could be something we could see, coming into the field, I feel, in a decade or so, and widespread, where we're reducing the amount of resin we use, which frees up that resin just to, move to other things where, resin can be chemically harmful. And if we can move to something that is chemically unharmful, I think that that's a great way to, stop the spread of some, medical problems. And it's just a good way to reduce the use of chemicals near our food and our medicine. Anyway, moving on to our next article, which is entitled Network Orchestra, which is a research from St. Louis University that uses sound to simplify complicated networking tasks. So this is a very interesting article. He didn't use sound to store data. He didn't use sound to transmit data because sound is obviously much slower than light. What he's using sound for here is really cool. It's not for data, but it's a great inexpensive way using a Raspberry Pi and some microphones that can augment a network components. So, yeah, what he's saying is they're not using sound to send data. They're using it for network management. So like in the physical data space, which is really cool because they're using it, what they're thinking of here is what can they do with it. So they're using it as a security doorbell. So if someone, a hacker will usually try to come into a server at all different angles. They'll try different doors, essentially. And using sound, it could ping every time they hit a different door. Now, what this would do is play a different pattern. So people could see, actual human operators could see every time someone came in from a different door, and they could trace that person to different doors. And then they could, theoretically come out and look, like they're trying to go here, here, and here. Where would they try next? Here. Can we block them here and also catch their IP here? Which is really cool. And it's a really ineffective, it is a really effective, I should say, and inexpensive way to manage networks. Because they could also be used, let's say fans go out or your heat sinks go out in certain parts of the building. By heat sinks, I don't mean metal heat sinks. Those don't go out. I mean like liquid nitrogen cooling piping that goes outside the building. Let's say it breaks or gets blocked or you run out of liquid nitrogen, which is really hard to do. But let's say that happens. Well, it could create another noise that could be picked up by these microphones, sent to the Raspberry Pi, and sent to the operator or just another, monitoring computer. And this is just all really cool to me. We find ways that are going to be used to, simplify our data and create, a faster way to detect problems and also just to manage our data. And, I know people with a lot of, experience with data. I shouldn't say data, with servers. And so they're always trying to find ways to improve servers, cut down on hacking, cut down on people just with malicious intents. And this is really cool. They've been always using the term network orchestra as a metaphor, but these researchers have really taken it to another level, really creating sound. Obviously data centers are very loud. If you've ever heard one, it's like a jet engine at points. When everything's running, these things are incredibly loud, but they're also incredibly cold. And so by using sound and teaching these microphones with these Raspberry Pis to pick up on certain notes or pings or buzzes or stuff like that, they're creating a way to simplify the way they program and control their systems in a way that, I shouldn't say it makes things easier, but it makes things easier to look at. So like when you're looking at things, it's not going to be, you have to sift through so much. The system itself will find what's wrong by using these sounds. Anyway, I just got a little rant there, but I think it's awesome that we're finding new ways to simplify our data management, because data management has grown so much in recent years that we have to find ways to, how do we get more data while also not using so much computing power? And I think this could be one way that, data centers could reduce the amount of power they use. And our last article for today is on a 71-year-old Frenchman. So, Jean-Jacques Savin, I took French in high school, I can kind of pronounce French names, left the Canary Islands off the west coast of Africa on Wednesday, which would have been the 26th, I want to say. Let me check here. Yeah, the 26th of December 2018. He's traveling at 2 or 3 miles an hour, or kilometers an hour, so 1 to 2 miles an hour. And he's literally barreling his way across the ocean using ocean currents. And this is really cool. He's being tracked online. He's approximately 19 miles off the coast of El Hierro. I don't know where that is, and that was updated yesterday. I shouldn't say yesterday. I'm recording this on a Friday. That was updated a few hours after he left, it looks like. And this is really cool. He's a retired military parachutist, and he funded this with sponsorships and a crowdfunding campaign. And a Facebook page has been set up posting updates of his progress. I'll link that below. This is really cool because, he's using this to also help marine observatories study ocean currents, which is JCOMMOPS. I don't know what that stands for. I don't want to guess. But he's using little buoys that he's tossing out to study ocean currents, which is really useful because, the ocean is one of those things besides space we don't know a lot about. Like, we know a lot about it, but we don't know as much as we think as humans. There's just so much unexplored. This is kind of cool, though. He's using this to really learn about the ocean and just kind of relax. He's got bottles of wine stored away and, all sorts of stuff stored away for his birthday in January. And it's really cool. He was saying he hopes to end up in maybe Barbados, but he really wants to end up on a French island because it'd be easier to get the barrel back, which is kind of funny. He's got about 2,850 miles from where he was a couple of days ago in El Hierro to Barbados. but his vessel is behaving very, very well so far. And I mean, he's got a little kitchenette, a bed, a lot of storage, plenty of, he's got all the abilities with a couple of portholes, one to watch underwater, one and a couple above water. So he's got a lot of things, to look at. It'll be interesting to track his journey, I think. If I were you guys, I would be. And it's in a big orange barrel, so it wouldn't be hard to spot. And this is just really cool. I mean, it's something someone is doing new in a way that they're being creative, which we love to see. People being creative is kind of the thing we want to promote here at Delta Y. And, just using your imagination to do things, this is something I didn't think someone would do. I mean, we've had people go over waterfalls with barrels and do all sorts of ridiculous things, but I haven't heard of someone crossing the ocean on purpose in a barrel. I mean, it's obviously, we'll be using this photo for our thumbnail, so you'll see it. This barrel is huge. I mean, he can stand up in it, no problem. He's got a hatch on top to go outside on top of it. It's not a small barrel, but it's just so cool to see, that creativity and everything like that. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up all I have to say about our articles for this week. So I'll just end off here. It's just me this week again. I know it can be a little boring, just one person yammering on. But Grayson should be back next week. We'll have to get his microphone in. He's hoping to have it by next Thursday. And then we'll be setting up how we're going to do this remotely for the next 2 weeks after that. And then we'll be back for the semester. But, it's interesting to see all these articles. And I want to thank you guys for your support. Remember, I'll link below our Patreon, our Twitter, our Facebook. I will say our Facebook's been kind of inactive because I've been trying to do so many things that I forget we have a Facebook sometimes just because I never use Facebook. But I do try to tweet when an episode goes up and things like that. And I do release these episodes I believe I'm releasing them at noon on Sundays. If I'm wrong there, I'm really wrong. But I want to say noon or 1 on Sundays. Sometime midday Sunday. So, it's a nice thing to sit back and relax on a Sunday and just listen to, some news from the week. Or just, our thoughts on it. Anyway, thank you for your support. I'll link all our social links below and these article links below. Once again, this is Josh. This is Delta Y. Stay creative, stay adventurous, and thank you for your support.